I was haunted by this moment for the past 2 months. I knew it was coming. The day would come when we would be taking off on this journey, 50 miles out to sea, 10 hours from help if anything had gone wrong.
Small Craft Advisory. This evening off of Montauk, we're about 13 miles to Rounding the Point. And then from there, it's a straight shot to Virginia. At one point, we'll be 60 miles out at sea.
I just met my crew literally a day ago. We don't even know each other. I just know these guys are capable of sailing. They've sailed their whole lives. And before I know it, my vessel is going twice as fast as I've ever seen it before. What this could mean to the length of the journey blows my mind. Instead of taking 3 days to do it, we might be able to do it in less than 2.5. The opportunity to sail with two members of the Colvin family, David Colvin and his brother Roger Colvin. These two guys are like icons in the sailing community. For them to land on my boat and willfully join me on this journey, arguably somebody that has almost no sailing experience compared to them, this was beyond a miracle.
That's good.
Sailing has been described as countless hours of complete bliss, followed by moments of sheer horror and panic. You do not even know if you're going to survive. And as in any journey, with so much writing on it, this would prove to be another example of the same thing. Nothing can prepare you for the horror. It comes out of nowhere. If you knew what it was that was coming, you would have prepared for it and you would have avoided it. So it's completely out of the box of your realm of thinking. You don't know what's about to hit you until you've been clobbered right over the top of the head with it. The following is a first-hand account by my personal psychiatrist, unofficial, of course, and the woman who I adore and love, my fiancée, Deborah Graves.
Can you describe to me what it was like the night before, or the days leading up to Mr. Tucker's journey? What was going through your mind knowing he was going to be out off sea for several days, maybe longer, with people he'd never met before?
I questioned whether or not the open-ended search for someone to assist you in the ocean was a good idea. The two gentlemen you chose, you didn't know at all, and you had absolutely no reliance that they were people of their word. You know, people often go missing out in the ocean, and they've been sailing, and I was a little concerned you'd set yourself up for some problems. I was very concerned the morning of when they didn't make the appropriate time, the designated time, and then they showed up looking really ill-prepared to sail with you. And And you were very kind and very professional. And I think that you like to be oppositional, like you like to say this is going to work, and sometimes it does.
But now we were confronted with a new challenge. The wind was nearly dead irons. In other words, smack on the nose. The sails were useless and had to be lowered. From here on in, all forward momentum was hinged upon my 74 horsepower Yanmar diesel engine. The thing had been money since the first time I kicked it over. The crew advised me to increase the RPM. Even though the tachometer wasn't fully functional, they were confident that she had more to give. I was apprehensive. She's a 1999 contraption. I wasn't interested in pushing her too much. Nightfall set in. Our vulnerability grew by the minute as we pushed further and further away from the coast. 10 miles turned into 12, 12 miles turned into 16. Finally, we were 20 miles off land, out in the North Atlantic Ocean. Suddenly, with no warning, Roger exclaimed, "The oil pressure gauge reads 20 pounds per square inch." I looked in disbelief for several seconds and then shot into action. Since the first time I snapped on the truly trusty Yanmar engine, the oil pressure had always been upwards to 60 pounds per square inch. It never once fluctuated. Never once. This was horrifying. The implications were dire. I instantly left the helm and ran down the steps, through the salon, and flipped open the engine compartment. Oil had sprayed all over the engine. The white napkins beneath the engine, tucked neatly underneath on the bilge floor, were covered in the black liquid oil, like my own private Exxon Valdez. Without a single hesitation, I ran back up to the helm and shut off the engine. The silence was deafening. There we were, 20 miles at sea in the pitch dark, in 3-foot seas, bobbing like a cork, not knowing whether we'd ever get the engine started again. With the adrenaline back up to a fever pitch, I ran back down to the engine to realize one of the oil fill caps had popped off. That was the reason we emptied the oil into the bilge. Was the damage already done? Had I blown the engine? Quickly, I began searching for the partially used gallons of oil remaining on the vessel and instantly found one that was nearly full. Quickly, I poured the oil into the engine fill. Meanwhile, paper towels were set out under the engine to begin absorbing the oil that had been spit out all over the compartment. David was at my side, handing me paper towels. watching me, helping me, giving me some confidence and encouragement on what to do. Like a contortionist, I twisted underneath the engine with a flashlight to find the yellow plastic fill cap that had popped off. This was unprecedented. Nothing like this had ever happened on Cloud 9 or even in previous vessel, Kobayashi Maru. I held my breath after pouring the first and only large container of oil back into the engine. Slipped in the dipstick, counted to 10, pulled it out, and found no register of the oil. My heart sank, and I thought we were dead in the water. I swiveled back into the cabinet in search of more unused motor oil and found another container, partially used. This one had even less than a half a gallon. I quickly poured it through the funnel back into the motor, knowing how easy it is to overfill the engine. I went half the container and checked the dipstick. Still empty, not a sign of any oil. I could not believe this was happening. I poured the remaining quart of oil into the motor, and I paused to make sure the oil dipstick had a chance to read what I had just poured in the reservoir. As carefully as I could, I slid the 2-foot-long probe inside the engine and then gently slid it back out to find I did it. We had enough oil to start the engine again.
From the core of my being, I knew that what Scott was doing, deep down, what he was doing was really irrational. These two dandies show up late and ill-prepared, and I thought, this is going to be the last time I ever see him. He's sailing off into the great blue. I'm going to snap a photo so that I can tell the police these are what the guys that look like that went with him.
The engine started, and off we went into the moonlight. The radar lit up like a Christmas tree throughout the night. Targets showed up everywhere, and then there was a glitch in the radar, which meant we had to shut it down and turn it back up. It was insane. The busiest shipping lanes this side of the Mississippi kept us on our toes the entire night. Targets would appear from nowhere, causing us to be on edge. I finally realized I had to get some sleep. The crew knew it as well, and they sent me to bed. Tighten the keel bolts. Make sure each one is properly aligned to match. The keel bolts must be properly aligned. Vessels have disappeared over the years because the keel fell off the damn thing. And the rudder was recreated and resurrected in my co-op. I built that thing. I knew I did. I built that thing right. Several layers of fiberglass. Proper alignment. Looks like we're headed into the no man's land here. As David snugs up the Bruce anchor, I'm curious to see in about 5 to 7 miles what happens when we hit the blue zone. Starting to see some teens. Saw an 18. A hell of a lot better than take a rest, baby. Take a rest. All right. Hello. Hello. at you! Oh!
Why a red-bellied woodpecker be 50 miles out at sea?
You take a rest.
And I've seen many episodes of crime videos of what to do with the first 48 hours. And, Scott had been meticulous about this. We were traveling with other sailors, and they left at the appointed time and said, "We'll see you out there." And the waters were choppy, and we're waiting on the dock for his crew. That came highly regarded, but neither one of us knew them. And it just absolutely looked like disaster all the way around. I would have completely bailed on the whole situation and not have left the dock. I certainly would not have invited the people along that he did. But Scott is a very trusting soul and very caring, and fortunately it all worked.
Even though this is our second night at sea, tension is high. The radar's lit up like a Christmas tree. All of a sudden, there's a cruise ship. When you first look at this blip on the radar, you don't know what it is. It could be a 20-foot boat. In this particular case, it's 1,000 feet long.
The offshore forecast for the following marine location: Hudson Canyon to Baltimore Canyon to 1,000 fathoms. Tonight, southwest winds 5 to 10 knots, becoming 5 to 15 knots, then becoming west 5 to 10 knots. Seas 3 to 4 feet. Tuesday, west winds less.
The marine forecast
South to southwest.
supersedes everything else.
Tuesday night,
If things are going to get snotty, you got to get the hell out of there. So you're constantly listening in to the NOAA forecast.
increasing to 10 to east 3 to 4 feet. Wednesday night, south to southwest winds 10 to 20 knots, becoming west to northwest.
What we were about to hear scared the ever-living crap out of us. 5 to 9 footers were coming ahead. We had no room for error. We had to hit our marks and get to Virginia.
Becoming 10 to 15 knots. Seas 5 to 9 feet. Friday.
Delaware Bay was the escape route. In case things went bad, I knew we could duck in there, but it was a solid 6 hours to get in. We got 140 miles ahead of us. There's no room to fool around. We gotta keep going, and we gotta beat the storm.
This is a page from what I consider oppositional defiance disorder. He contacted people he didn't know. He put out a Facebook request. He was looking all over the place. I kept just trying to nicely let him know I was concerned. And he was determined to do it anyways. And again, it's just, sometimes he wants to be oppositional just to be oppositional. All of the cards were stacked against him. The weather was bad. His ship traveling companion had headed out already, and the 2 people that showed up were late with just a myriad of small containers, and it was the makings for a disaster.
Luck would have it the Colvin brothers were far more capable than I as sailors. And quite honestly, without them, I would have been lost. They transformed the trip into a faster, better, more manageable situation than it ever would have been
with probably 99.9% of the other sailors around. For the months and weeks preceding this trip, I swore I wasn't even going to do it. Why would you do this? What would compel you to drive a sailboat 365 miles, 3 days and 3 nights at sea with people you did not know? Makes no sense at all. As the minutes turned into hours and hours turned into days, I began to realize that David and Roger Colvin were two of the most fantastic human beings I had ever met. They were capable. They were kind. They were patient. They were respectful. We got a fish on!
At first, I didn't think because I could stop it with my thumb. Started tugging.
Started swimming with us.
Another one of the principles that I shared with the Colvin brothers was that anything we would catch, we would completely consume.
At the surface.
There was no trophy fishing. It wasn't about macho. It was about catch a fish, consume the protein. No big bragging rights. Just a ceremonial feast.
Baby, you got him! Gorgeous. Look at the color.
We can eat this kind, right?
They're not that tasty. It's okay, baby. Can we,
And in what seems like a blink of an eye later, we are encountering these amazing Atlantic white-sided dolphins swimming in a line. It's as though they are choreographing a show for us. And seconds later, it's an enormous marine reptile. We couldn't get close enough to see what species, but it looks like a gigantic leatherback turtle. And as we feast upon the fruits of the labor to capture that false albacore, I know tougher times are ahead. We've got one more night of intensity as we enter the busiest military channel on the East Coast, the entrance into Hampton Roads.
You fire away. I just wanted you to know I'm not...
It's nearly 3 o'clock in the morning. I am delirious. We've been traveling for 3 days and nights. We've entered into the busiest military zone on this side of the United States. It's dark. There's targets everywhere. It's hard to tell who is what. Military vessels, plus civilian vessels like our own. Some of which that don't even have the proper running lights. We saw one guy with no port light. We didn't know which direction he was coming from. It was absolutely terrifying. You could have a destroyer coming through. You could have a gunship. You could have cargo ships and everything in between.
Everything's visual and you're not on edge as much, you know?
This could not be more stressful. Entering between two roadways that submerge and create a tunnel. Everything imaginable is riding on us getting this right.